This week's guest is Tom Deierlein. He's the CEO of Thundercat Technologies, a former Army Ranger, and the co-founder of the TD Foundation. Tom, thanks for joining us.
I appreciate your time.
So tell us about your experience as far as coming from the military and becoming an entrepreneur.
You know, when I was 13 years old, I decided I want to go to West Point. And I said, okay, I'm going to go to West Point, and then I'll go in the military for 5 years, and then I'll go and become a successful businessman. I go to West Point, Airborne Ranger, Berlin Brigade. We could spend hours talking about my time in Berlin. So I got out in 1993. So everything was on track. 12 years later, a plan that a 13-year-old had made. And I went to work for Johnson & Johnson. So I realized pretty quickly that I did not want to be in a large organization, you know, the classic small cog in a big wheel. And so over the next few years, I continued to go to smaller and smaller companies. So I ended up going to a mid-cap company, Parametric Technology Corporation, selling software there. Then I went on to Net Gravity. During that time, I was working on my MBA part-time, so I was working crazy mad hours. And that's when I would say that I went from being in an entrepreneurial environment to being an entrepreneur. I was employee number 7 at an early stage startup called Dynamic Logic, working for the two co-founders, Ronit Aviv and Nick Nyan, both brilliant people. That was a startup.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it was a tiny room.
That's the very definition, the feeling.
And we're just scrapping. And no one knew who we were. Zero brand awareness. You know, we were a distant number 3 in the marketplace, but the technology was better, and I knew it was better. And so we just leveraged that to grow the company. Within 2 years, we were by far and away the number 1 in the industry in terms of market share, in terms of revenue, and in terms of brand awareness and favorability, all the key attributes that make companies successful. So it went from 7 to 125 people, triple-digit growth year after year, and doing business with the biggest companies in the digital media space.
Huge home run?
Oh, huge home run.
Yeah.
There were 2 things that occurred to me. One, and I think this is important for all entrepreneurs, if I won the lottery, I wouldn't tell a soul.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
you go right back to work the next day.
Because I just really looked forward to Mondays and cursed Fridays. Like, you're not always going to have that. And then 2, I was sitting with a friend of mine, and he says, you know, one day I picture myself sitting in an auditorium, addressing my employees, and there's 1,000 people in a room. And I took a long sip of my beer, and I looked at him, and I said, I will never be at a company that has 1,000 people.
That's exactly right. I
not
call
as
that hell.
Like, I just wouldn't do that. And it was then that I realized that this is it. Like, I am now officially a serial entrepreneur. Yeah. You're going to go on and you're going to do another one. And if that one doesn't work, you start another one. If that doesn't work, maybe that one makes it or breaks even. And you just do it. But Dynamic Logic was interesting because we built this family, not a team, a family. Like, we hung out together. We went to each other's weddings.
So you've now made this leap. You've gone to past the point of no return. You realize you're a serial entrepreneur. And you're going to go out, after you get out, you're going to start doing other stuff. So what was the next couple projects?
What's that movie, Girl Interrupted? So this is Entrepreneur Interrupted. So we sold the company in 2005. Well, in November of 2005, I got called back into the military.
Oh, wow.
So keep in mind.
So you've been out since
12 years. And I had just cashed this huge check. I couldn't claim financial hardship. Oh, I can't go back and make my Army pay. Like, I had a good life. I had plenty of in savings, and it was time for me to go serve my country. But there were some dark days there because I thought, man, I'm just not going to do this. But I call it the shaving principle, right? Like, you got to shave every morning. Like, how are you going to look yourself in the mirror every morning and say, oh, when the country called, I didn't, you know? You know, it's funny because we're talking about the military and entrepreneurs and what makes military people special. I credit my parents by far and away number 1. Number 2, West Point. Number 3, Ranger School. Those 3 things make me who I am. So when the military called me back and said, hey, we need you, you can't run around telling people you're an airborne ranger.
Had the patch.
And then when it's time for you to go execute on those skills again, that you're like, well, I hired a lawyer and get out of it.
So you're in theater, is that what they call it?
That's in theater.
So you're in theater.
Or I'll say in the box. Or
in the box.
Yeah.
Things are going great.
Yeah, and we're doing well. It takes about 3 months to get your footing. I was scared. I mean, when you go through all this training, I went to Fort Bragg, I went, now I'm special operations, but you get on ground and you're like, people are getting shot at, people are getting blown up, people are dying. I mean, my first couple weeks on the ground, I was scared, naturally scared. But we were all coming together, and we had a great team, and we made things happen. So yes, things were going well. And then in September, I got shot by a sniper, which was just...
Hold on. You say it so casually, and then I got shot.
Yeah.
You got shot by a sniper.
It was...
What was happening? Tell me about the...
So like I said, we were doing a lot of the reconstruction. I was part of a thing called Operation Together Forward 2, which was the retaking of Baghdad in the summer of 2006. And what we did was we'd go and surround a certain part of the town. And in this case, it was Adamiyah, a Sunni enclave. And it was clear hold build. We were going to surround it. We just rolled in one night. Nobody in, nobody out, no cars. Sweep out all the bad guys, weapons, ammunition, explosives. Hold it and transition the security over to the Iraqi forces and build. My job was the build. So we did a lot of supplying of hospitals, supplying of schools, electrical networks, and my main task over that second week was all this, just clearing the streets of debris and trash. And somebody was shooting at some of our contractors. So we rolled out there to A, protect them, B, investigate and find out what was going on, and 3, collect intelligence so we could call it up to the kinetic guys, the door kickers, and so they could go find out who was doing this and eliminate the threat. And we got out there, and it was, you definitely get that spidey sense, right? When people talk about the principles of SOF, Special Operations Forces, one of those principles is situational awareness. People are scowling at us, and so as I talked to my buddy, Drew Corbin, and he was in charge of that patrol. I'm like, what's going on? He's like, nothing, I'm not getting anything. So I walked up to my Humvee, and I went like this, let's go. So keep in mind, when you pull up, immediately you put out 360-degree security where everyone's scanning. So I go like this. Mistake number 1. I'm in charge.
Oh, yeah.
Number 2, we're leaving, so you better shoot somebody now.
If you're going to shoot somebody,
why don't you shoot that tall guy that's standing
waving around
that's staring there? So look, that guy, so people like, and I joke about it, but but so I was standing there, and then I just heard a loud explosion, and I got thrown back. And the last thing that I saw was my boots. So I thought that I heard a loud explosion, so I thought it was a roadside bomb that somebody had triggered with a cell phone or something, and it had just cut me in half. Because as I was getting thrown back, my boots were staying on the ground. No, the last thing I saw was me going, listen, and them staying, me separating from my legs. And so I hit the ground, and I looked up, and I was like, man, I can't believe this is it. Because I figure I got 30 seconds. Like, I'm going to bleed out. Sure. Like, you're missing the bottom half, there's plenty of vessels that are going to be. So I figured I would bleed out in about 30 seconds. And I was just laying there, and my life did not flash before my eyes. Maybe that's why I should have known I was going to die. Yeah. And I just thought, really? So then my buddy calls out to me. He starts screaming. He's like, Tom, can you walk at all? Can you walk at all? That was the greatest question I've ever heard in my life. Because if he could see me and he would ask that question, he wouldn't be asking that if I was in 2 pieces.
Sure.
So I looked down, I got my legs. I'm like, oh no, but I couldn't. I had a spinal cord injury. And so they evac'd me. I got to an LZ that was about a mile away, which we had a FOB, a forward operating base. Bird came in, got me to the hospital in Baghdad. And they operated on me. I almost bled to death. They had to give me factor 7. Which is an emergency blood coagulant. It's just so fascinating when you'll ever talk to any wounded warrior, and everyone has a story about their alive day. But it's a centimeter this way, I'd be in a wheelchair. A centimeter that way, I'd be dead. I just feel fortunate. It's like every day's a holiday, every meal's a feast.
So you come back.
I rehab for about 8 months. And while I'm in the hospital, I meet a friend of a friend, this guy, Doug Dunkel, who I had known and worked with at Parametric Technology Corporation, but another good friend of mine had followed him on to Oracle or Cisco. And he had a new startup with 4 business partners, including a disabled vet, Bob Eisenmenger, Night Point Systems, and those guys would come to the hospital, and they would do my rehab with me. Like, so I'd have to do all these workouts, and really that's what my job was for 8 months, is working out and rehabbing. And he would bring me soup and a sandwich. You know, he was just a good guy. Mm-hmm. Well, about 6 months after I get out of the hospital, I get a phone call from Doug with this opportunity. He says, look, you know, our business, we're doing IT services, but we've got this products group that we want to separate into a separate company. Would you be interested in buying the products group? My call sign in Baghdad was Thundercat 6, so Thundercat Technology became the name.
Very cool. So what do you guys do at Thundercat?
It depends on who you talk to, right? VAR, that used to be the classic, but
Gotcha.
now we're a systems integrator, value-added reseller or a systems integrator. So we sell anything that goes into a data center. So we claim that we'll do data center solutions, and we sell exclusively, almost exclusively, to the federal government.
Tell us a little bit about the TD Foundation.
So going back to Baghdad, when I got there, it was just sad. You know, kids running around without clothes, without shoes. I mean, it's 125 degrees out, and a mother's got to decide which of her kid gets to drink some water today. Like, that's brutal.
That's tough.
And the military, especially civil affairs, humanitarian aid is a critical mission for civil affairs. But it's sort of in phases, right? You come in, the battle is taking place, you're supposed to be making sure that all the non-combatants, the civilians, hence the name civil affairs, are safe, and you're trying to keep them out of harm's way, basically. Part of that then, because you're disrupting all these services, you got to make sure they have food, water, their schools, right? I had a hard time working within the bureaucracy of the Army, so I just started emailing all my friends back home and telling them, mail me clothes, books, toys, soccer balls are a huge hit. And all of a sudden, boxes started flowing in. And we would go on a mission and be like, okay, let's remember this place. Next time we're going to be in this area, we're going to pull up and we're going to go ahead and disperse a bunch of toys and clothes, and vitamins was a big one. I thought, man, these 10-year-old kid this tall. Yeah. And so we did a lot of vitamins, which was pretty fascinating, right? Because culturally, women can't interact with males that are not related to them. And you wouldn't want to create that situation either. Quickly, that's a quick way to get shot too. So we'd set up and start giving out gallons of water. Little kids come up, toys, food, teenagers, men show up, everyone's taking it in. Then you break out a bottle of vitamins and you hand it to a little kid. He disappears. Count to 100. Next thing you know, there's a queue of 50 women, full burqas, queuing up for the vitamins because they knew the power of the vitamins. That was so important. And mothers are the same no matter what. Fathers are the same. They just want their kids to have a decent life, a good education, food on the table, and a shelter, and maybe slightly better than the life that they led. So this was going on, and we would do, about once a week, we would try and distribute some goods tied into our other missions. And then I got shot. So some friends of mine, Paul Bremer and Sean Finnegan, got together with Bill Flatley over at Forbes, and we were going to do a fundraiser when I was going to be home on leave. But now once I was shot, now I'm down in Walter Reed, they still did the fundraiser, and that was the birth of the TD Foundation. And now, 6 years later, almost 6 years later, we have done almost 40 life-saving surgeries. We've shipped more than $150,000 worth of school supplies. We've shipped more than $50,000 worth of vitamins. We raise, look, it's not some huge organization. We raise, somewhere around $100,000 each year.
So you've had all these incredible experiences. So let's talk for a second about the unique ability that you and other veterans bring to being an entrepreneur. What do you think makes them special? What is it that makes them incredible entrepreneurs?
There's a study out now with Dr. Angela Duckworth. I don't know if you've seen it. It's called the Grit Scale. And it's all about resilience and persistence. And it's more a prediction of success than now is emotional IQ and intelligence. It's crazy. It's just those people that are going to go and go and go. And the adaptability and flexibility. Once you have your mission, once you have your vision as an entrepreneur, the pivot, the shift, constantly looking at the environment and being able to adjust. It's Darwinism at its best. People think Darwinists, they say, oh, only the strongest will survive. That is the biggest fallacy ever. It's the fittest, not the strongest, the fittest. And it meant those that are most able to adapt. And only entrepreneurs that are constantly adapting to the marketplace, their customers, their competitors, are going to survive. And military people do that every day in the battlefield.
That's amazing. Tom, thanks so much for joining us.
I appreciate your time. Thank you for having me.